Hello Collision fans, to the Scaroscope. I'm Fedora, and today's a big one, in more ways than one, because we're going to be finally looking at the 2014 version of the King of Monsters himself, Godzilla. Tensions were high for this one, because the last time America made a Godzilla movie, we got Jurassic Park 2. So people were very nervous about this, but as soon as the trailer hit, expectations rose a bit because they were definitely going in a more ambient angle this time around. This movie stars Breaking Bad's Bryan Cranston as Joe. He's a scientist. Him and his family live on this nuclear power plant foundation in one of those towns that they build for the workers. So yeah, him and his wife work at the plant. But there's a horrible meltdown, or at least that's what they say it is, the man. And the entire town is obviously evacuated, well, those who survive anyway. And while Joe's son, in the years since, Ford, leaves Japan where it's set, starts his own life, has a wife and child of his own, Joe, unfortunately, is stuck in the past. He's staying in Japan and he's trying to work out this conspiracy theory that he believes the government has put, because he doesn't believe that this was a natural disaster or a meltdown. He believes something else has happened. When Ford heads back to Japan to bail his father out of jail, they immediately head back into the town, surprisingly easily for such a military-controlled area that Joe's been locked out of for the last 15 years. They're captured by the Japanese military, and they discover that, yes indeed, this was not a natural disaster, this was a giant kaiju cocoon. As soon as I saw this thing, I was like, is it Mothra? Is it Batra? I mean, it could be King Ghidorah for all I knew. Unfortunately, it was none of those. It was a brand new kaiju. It's not necessarily a bad thing, obviously. They wanted to make their own mark on the Godzilla universe by introducing their own monster. This creature that hatches from the cocoon, which the military dubbed Muto, along with all the other kaiju, as it's explained in the beginning of the film, are now no longer nuclear-created creatures. They weren't created through, nuclear bombs or Godzilla's DNA or anything like that. They're natural creatures, basically inhabiting the Earth in a time when it was more radiated, and they survived on the radiation. But nowadays, obviously, that's not the case. So when Muto hatches from its cocoon, it flies around the world looking for nuclear hotspots to feed on, in which the world currently has a lot of, aka nuclear bombs. This is where Godzilla comes into play, because as I mentioned, all the kaiju are now natural creatures, including Godzilla, although the King of Monsters role is a little bit different. He is now the alpha predator, the balancer of nature. Basically, whenever a kaiju appears during human-occupied time zones, say now, Godzilla awakens and it's his mission to destroy the kaiju. He's basically, like I said, nature's way of balancing itself out, because kaiju and humans apparently aren't allowed to exist in the same place at the same time. So, send in Godzilla to deal with them. Eventually a second Muto appears and Godzilla chases the two of them all around the planet until they arrive at New York, where the final battle takes place. With pros, the first one that springs to my mind is Godzilla himself, because he looks fantastic. Forget about that piece of crap Velociraptor they had as a substitute in the '98 version. This is the 1954 Godzilla in CG form. It looks fantastic. Everything you expect Godzilla to have, he has, including but not limited to his famous atomic breath. As far as cons go, as I mentioned, it does focus a lot on the humans, and they're not that really interesting to look at. But when it does focus on Godzilla and the Muto, this happens at a certain point in the film, so it's not spoiling anything. There's a certain point where people start cheering for Godzilla. Now this happened in the Japanese versions, but the Japanese versions were different because these were silly movies. I mean, you have creatures like Biolante and Space Godzilla and like these wacky creatures created by even wackier circumstances. But this is a Hollywood production that's designed to be serious. And when you have people cheering for Godzilla and praising him as the King of Monsters and the savior of the sea and things like that, I just gotta think, why are you doing this? I mean, no rational human being, even after a big, massive fight, where basically the entire of New York was wiped out, would somebody look at this like 100-foot tall creature and start cheering for him? Yeah, he saved us. I mean, Godzilla walking through a street is bound to kill hundreds of people. I mean, no less than the Muto did when they entered the city. The only thing that separated Godzilla's actions from the Muto's actions is that you saw the Muto actively killing humans. I mean, Godzilla, I assume, would have done the same in the same situation. I mean, they're all animals, but because we saw the Muto going out of their way to attack people, in a sense, they're depicted as more evil in this stance, while Godzilla is depicted as heroic. So that was a little confusing, but he's the hero after all. It's a Godzilla movie, so while it's not too believable that the human characters in the movie do it, we can do it ourselves. So it's probably just me nitpicking. In the end though, this was definitely a solid movie. It was definitely worth the hype. It erased the memories of the '98 version instantly. And it actually got a lot of praise from the Japanese audience as well, so thumbs up all around. As you'd expect, they're already developing a sequel, so we'll have to wait and see how that goes when it happens. I'd like to see some classic kaiju. I mean, that's probably another nitpicking con in that case, where I would have liked to see some classic kaiju enemies, like so I throw in Mothra or Gigan or King Ghidorah or something like that, but you never know, it might happen in the sequel. Well, that's all we have time for on Under the Scaroscope tonight. Check out some of the other fantastic channels of Collision, or my channel, Splat and a Hat 1, and my show, Oh the Horror. And we'll see you next time.